Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Ashtotra Shada Shri Srimad Abhaya Charanaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Ashtotra Shada Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Srila Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai Jai Nitya Lila Pravishna Om Vishnupada Vaishnava Sarvabhaum Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Gauriya Vaishnav Guru Varga Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Nantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol All Glory Samudavaris Hare Krishna All Glory Samudavaris Hare Krishna All glories to Madhavaris Hare Krishna, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, reading today from Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 19, texts 4 to 7. Again, I'm not sure how they do it. I think I'll read this one, we'll do it the normal way, and then the other ones, do we read it together, or how are the readings? It's up to me. Chai, I'm the boss for today. Anvito Brahma Sarvabhyam Lokapalai Sahanugaihi Upagiyamano Gandharvair Munibhischapsaro Ganaihi Anvito Brahma Sarvabhyam Lokapalaihi Sagnugaihi Upagiyamano Gandharvair Munibhischapsaro Ganaihi Anvito Brahma Sarvabhyam Lokapalaihi Sahagunaihi Upagiyamano Gandharvair Munibhischapsaro Ganaihi Anvito Brahma Sarvabhyam Lokapalaihi Sanagunaihi Upagiyamano Gandharvair Munibhischapsaro Ganaihi Anvito Brahma Sarvabhyam Lokapalaihi Sahagunaihi Upagiyamano Gandharvair Munibhischapsaro Ganaihi Anvito Brahma Sarvabhyam Lokapalay Saha Nugaihi Upagiyamano Gandharvair Munibhischapsaro Ganai. Anvito Brahma Sarvabhyam No Gandharvair Munibhischapsaro Ganai. Anvito Brahma Sarvabhyam Napalay Saha Gunai Gandharvair Munibhischapsaro Ganai. Anvitaha, being accompanied. Brahma, by Lord Brahma. Sharvabhyam. It keeps messing me. I want to say Sarvabhyam. And by Lord Shiva. Lokapalaihi, by the predominating chiefs of all different planets. Saha Anugaihi, along with their followers. Upagiyamanaha, being praised. Gandharvaihi, by the residents of Gandharva Loka. Munibhihi, by great sages. Cha, also. Apsara Ganaihi, by the residents of Apsara Loka. Translation. When Lord Vishnu appeared in the sacrificial arena, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and all the chief predominating personalities of every planet, as well as their followers, came with him. When he appeared on the scene, the residents of Gandharva Loka, the great sages, and the residents of Apsara Loka all praised him. Now for the other shlokas, I think we'll just do one time through. I think most of you have Bhagavatam with you. So. Siddha Vidyadhara Daitya Danava Guhyakadayaha Sunnananda Pramukha Parshada Pravaraharehe. The Lord was accompanied by the residents of Siddhalok and Vidyadhara Lok, all the descendants of Diti, and the demons and the yakshas. He was also accompanied by his chief associates, headed by Sunanda and Nanda. Text 6. Kapilo Narado Datto Yogesha Sannakadayaha Tamanviyur Bhagavata Ye Chatat Sevanotsukaha. Great devotees who are always engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as well as the great sages named Kapila, Narad, and Dattatreya, and masters of mystic powers, headed by Sanaka Kumar, all attended the great sacrifice with Lord Vishnu. Text 7. Yatra dharma dugha bhumihi sarva kama dugha sati dogdhi smabhipsitanarthan yajamanasya bharata. My dear Vidura, in that great sacrifice the entire land came to be like the milk-producing Kamadhenu, and thus, by the performance of yajna, all daily necessities for life were supplied. Report. In this verse, the word dharma dugha is significant, for it indicates Kamadhenu. Kamadhenu is also known as Surabhi. Surabhi cows inhabit the spiritual world, and, as stated in the Brahma Samhita, Lord Krishna is engaged in tending these cows. Surabhir abhipalayantam. One can milk a Surabhi cow as often as one likes, and the cow will deliver as much milk as one requires. Milk, of course, is necessary for the production of so many milk products, especially clarified butter, which is required for the performance of great sacrifices. Unless we are prepared to perform the prescribed sacrifices, our supply of the necessities of life will be checked. Bhagavad Gita confirms that Lord Brahma created human society along with yajna, the performance of sacrifice. Yajna means Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and sacrifice means working for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this age, however, it is very difficult to find qualified brahmanas who can perform sacrifices as prescribed in the Vedas. Therefore, it is recommended in Srimad Bhagavatam, Yagyai Sankirtana Prayahi, that by performing Sankirtan Yagya and by satisfying the Yagya Purush, Lord Chaitanya, one can derive all the results derived by great sacrifices in the past. King Prithu and others derived all the necessities of life from the earthly planet by performing great sacrifices. Now this Sankirtan movement has already been started by the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. People should take advantage of this great sacrifice and join in the society's activities. Then there will be no scarcity. If Sankirtana Yagya is performed, there will be no difficulty, not even in industrial enterprises. Therefore, this system should be introduced in all spheres of life: social, political, industrial, commercial, etc. Then everything will run very peacefully and smoothly. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Soyam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratrishe Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, we read something interesting in this section of Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam. And we find a very sweet principle. It reminds me, in the Bhagavad Gita, of course, we hear Krishna. He speaks about japa, right? And then Srila Prabhupada, he speaks in this purport of our japa of Hare Krishna, which is perhaps not exactly the form of japa that was indicated in the original context. But it is a hint towards a fuller conception that has come from Lord Chaitanya. So we can see here this whole concept that yajna, you all get very excited about yajnas, right? In South Asia, they're performing homas, right? And yajnas and all sorts of different things. People get very worked up about it. I remember when I was in Mayapur recently, I was talking to one of the teachers at the Mayapur Academy. Maybe some of us will be familiar with the Mayapur Academy. This is where they teach all the deity worship and all the related ritualistic activities that we still perform in Krishna consciousness. And so I was talking to this teacher, and I was asking some questions about the performance of yajnas. And they said something very interesting. They were saying that Jananivas Prabhu, who is no small authority in the field of our ritual activities in Krishna consciousness, perhaps I shouldn't say ritualistic, right? Ritual activities, but they're devotional, not ritualistic. But I was asking him a question about yajnas, and he quoted Jananivas Prabhu. And he said, because I was asking about, we see different styles of yajnas, right? We'll see in Sydney, we do ours a little bit simple, but then you'll see if a Guru Kuli comes and does it, you know, they'll wear a turban and they'll do all these extra mantras, and they'll have all of these special mudras and all of these different things that normally we don't perform. And so I was asking, you know, saying which are the different sources, the different pramans we have for all of these different varieties of performances of yajna. And he cited Jananivas Prabhu, and he said that actually Jananivas Prabhu says the more complex, the less bona fide it is. And I thought this was interesting, because in my mind I was thinking, you do all the right mudras, right? You say all these different mantras, you do all of it in all these complex different forms, it'll be more pakka, more bona fide, more Vedic, right? This is the idea we have. But Jananivas Prabhu actually said, the more simple, the more bona fide it is. This is interesting, right? And Jananivas Prabhu, he said this because he said, the real yajna that's performed when the fire sacrifice is going is the chanting of Hare Krishna in the background. And if this complex yajna becomes the center of attention, then it becomes less bona fide, because the actual pakka yajna is the kirtan. It is the sankirtan itself. And so this is an interesting concept. When we make it more complex, we start to give people the idea that by the performance of the fire sacrifice, this is where the substance is. But no, not in this Kali Yuga. What are we hearing? Prabhupada writes in this purport. In this age, however, it is very difficult to find qualified brahmanas who can perform sacrifices as prescribed in the Vedas. In this Kali Yuga, there are very few people who are qualified to perform these majestic yajnas that we hear, and yet, even if we were to find qualified brahmanas to perform these rituals, still Sankirtan would be the center. Firstly, because it is the Yuga Dharma, but secondly, because what do we see in all of the previous ages, right? Harinam has still always been the highest and most transcendental process. We hear that the Devatas, right? They are praying that they can take birth in the Sankirtan movement. They're having access to yajnas, right? I mean, how did they get to where they are? By the performance of karma kanda activities, right? And yet they are praying that they will be able to take part in the Sankirtan movement. So even if we had brahmanas such as those that existed in Treta Yuga, we would still be better off embracing and taking shelter in the Sankirtan movement. Now Prabhupada, he says something interesting in this purport. He says that Brahma, at the creation, alongside human society, he has created yajna. This is interesting, right? Because we see this is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, right? This is a famous text in chapter 3. And it describes how alongside the creation, right? I can't remember the shlok. But it talks about how at the beginning of the creation, alongside the creation of the prajas, which is all of the different living entities, after Srishtva, after they've been created, Pruvacha, just before manifesting this creation, Uvacha, Prajapati. Prajapati, he says, engage in yajna, right? Saha yajna prajaha, something like that. So the yajna has been created alongside the prajas, the living beings. Prajapati. But does anyone know, how does Prabhupada render in his purport? How does he render this text? What does he say about Prajapati? Does anyone know? There's a Bhakti Shastri quiz. Sorry to be a little heavy at 8:25 in the morning. But does anyone know? Prabhupada says that Prajapati is Vishnu. And yet in this purport, he's talking about how Brahma has created yajna alongside the human beings. It's an interesting point. Or maybe not, but I think it's an interesting point, right? And what is the significance of this? Actually, what we'll see is if we read the previous Acharya's Bhagavad Gita commentaries, is that Baladev Vidyabhushan, he says that Prajapati in this verse is Vishnu. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says that it is Brahma. So we see actually different Acharyas have translated this differently. And what we see is that Prabhupada, he is using both in different contexts. Here in this purport, he is taking Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's perspective, that it is Brahma who has spoken this and who has created Yagya at the same time. In Bhagavad Gita, he's taken the perspective of Baladev Vidyabhushan. So we see here, sometimes people feel, we'll read Bhagavad Gita, we'll go through once and then we have some master of it, right? I remember I was talking to one youth once, and he was buying all of these different editions of Bhagavad Gita, and he said, I'm going to read all of them, and then at the end I will become a master of Bhagavad Gita. That's what he said. And I said, you'll never become a master of Bhagavad Gita. This is not possible. Not by reading will this Bhagavad Gita open up its contents to you. Not by study will this Bhagavad Gita open up its contents to you. But by devotional service. But even then, by study, how much do we have to study? We will not understand Bhagavad Gita by reading Bhagavad Gita. We will understand Bhagavad Gita by reading Bhagavad Gita as it is. Srimad Bhagavatam with the Bhaktivedanta purports. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita with the Bhaktivedanta purports. And then reading Bhagavad Gita as it is again and again and again. And then we will understand something of Bhagavad Gita, but we will never master Bhagavad Gita, because that is not our goal. If we have the goal to master Bhagavad Gita, we will learn nothing. But if we have the goal to be mastered by the Bhagavad Gita, if we have the goal to approach this text and think this text will become my Lord and Master, if we go and approach this text with the idea, not that I will become a master of its contents, but that the Bhagavad Gita, when I read it and I apply it into my life, it will master me. All aspects of my life will be ruled and understood by this book, Bhagavad Gita. Then I will have attained some of its knowledge. So what we see that's rather interesting is that Prabhupada, throughout all of his books, he's providing so much insight, right? Sometimes I was discussing with one of my good friends, we were talking about Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, and we were saying, sometimes you read in Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada, he translates a verse that you've heard so many times from Bhagavad Gita as it is, and he translates it in a completely novel, in a brand new way in the purport, and it just opens up with this whole new level of nectar. So we should never feel satisfied with our study of Prabhupada's books. Even the smallest books, we should never feel, oh, I've read this. This is basic. Right? Because what is in Prabhupada's books? What has Prabhupada done? Prabhupada, he has manifested all around the world so many temples, so many disciples. Right? These days, I think, whenever we have a Prabhupada disciple come to our temple, how do we feel? We think, oh wow, it's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, right? There's all of this great excitement. And we should have this excitement. But we think, how great then is the personality who is the spiritual master of these people we feel so much excitement for, right? We feel all of that excitement, and that is an angsha of the glory of Srila Prabhupada, quite literally, right? Sometimes it's said that the Uttama Adhikari is defined as that person who, when other people see them, they begin to chant Hare Krishna, right? We hear this is the definition of the Uttama Adhikari. So then what is a qualification of Srila Prabhupada? Forget about seeing Prabhupada. Whenever anyone sees a follower of Prabhupada, what do they say? Oh, there's a Hare Krishna. And they're chanting the holy name. Prabhupada is Uttama Adhikari among Uttama Adhikaris. We'll have to create a new category for Srila Prabhupada, right? Prabhupada's glory is not that by seeing him people chant Hare Krishna. Prabhupada's glory is that by seeing his followers, people chant Hare Krishna. And what are these books that Prabhupada has given us? These books are the means through which he has achieved what he has achieved. What potency does he have to empower everyone to chant this holy name? And that potency is realized in these books. So therefore, even the small books, when we hold it, sometimes I think you hold Easy Journey to Other Planets, you hold On the Way to Krishna, you hold these books in your hand, and you think, what is held inside these books? It is the empowerment. Prabhupada is Shakti Avesh Avatar. That empowerment itself is in my hand. And when I'm reading these books, I'm not just reading words. I'm not just encountering this empowerment of Krishna himself, but I'm seeing the means through which Lord Chaitanya's desire that every town and village will be chanting the glories of the Lord has been attained. When we read these books, we are reading the means through which the desire of Lord Chaitanya himself was achieved. So these books are no ordinary books. They are not simply objects of knowledge. They are not objects of study. They are directly the mercy of Krishna himself. So these are what Prabhupada's books are. They're no small thing. And when we understand this, we'll find that none of Prabhupada's books are basic. I remember once I asked my Shiksha Guru when I think I was like 15 or so 14, 15, I was going through Prabhupada's library, if you will. And I told him, I said, oh, Prabhu, when can I go out of these small books, right? When can I stop reading the small books and when can I start reading Chaitanya Charitamrita? And then he said, Prabhu, when I stop reading the small books, you can stop reading the small books. He's been in Shastra Chakshush Prabhu. He's been serving Srila Prabhupada since 1978. Right? Since 1978, he's been reading Prabhupada's books. And he said, when I stop reading them, then you can stop reading them. These books are a very special thing. And we see that Prabhupada in his purport here, he is providing further insight, further insight, further insight. We will never exhaust the level of insight that Prabhupada has provided in these books. So we should feel that when we read these books, right? We often say, oh, I wish I could have, met Prabhupada in person I could have had service for his Vapu form, right? We feel this. And then we often hear the response, well, you can associate with Srila Prabhupada through his books. We hear this, but we should think. The reason why we can is because of that empowerment that is flowing out. Prabhupada saw this as his legacy. Prabhupada didn't, we have so many different things, right? So many different things in ISKCON today, right? We think of building temples, we think of, people wearing dhoti in a paka way. We think of people doing very nice yagyas, right? We think of, politicians will visit our temples and we will feel, oh, this is the glory of Srila Prabhupada. But Prabhupada did not see his glory in this way. Prabhupada saw his glory in the existence of his books, in the existence of his literature. These days it's very fashionable, and I don't want to be discouraging when I say this, but it's very fashionable that people are very involved in these kirtan melas, right? People are doing, 24-hour kirtan mela, 48-hour kirtan mela, 70, they'll keep on adding days and days and days. Non-stop kirtan, right? Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam, right? They will keep on doing these non-stop kirtan melas, and everyone gets so keen, right? I hear every year, they're like, wow, we're doing a kirtan mela, and they feel that this is the most exciting thing. But in Prabhupada's time, we only find record of really one substantially long kirtan mela that Prabhupada performed. And it was a kirtan mela that went 12 years of him writing his books and having it distributed all around the world. We get very excited for kirtan mela, sitting down, taking shelter of the holy name, and that's good. Kirtan is good. Prabhupada says we should have shelter of kirtan. But Prabhupada says the primary form of Sankirtan that we should take shelter in is the distribution of his literature, through preaching, through book distribution, through sharing Krishna with others. This is the great kirtan mela. This is the kirtan mela that Prabhupada engaged in every single day. The Brihat Mridanga, the great kirtan. And as great as any other kirtan mela might be, that is the greatest kirtan mela in history. So this Sankirtan Yagya, how is it performed? I remember I heard once, one pastime, Pujyapat Tripurari Maharaj, he was walking. He woke up in the middle of the night, I think, to go to the bathroom. And when he went to the bathroom, he walked past Prabhupada's room, right? And as he walked past Prabhupada's room, he heard Prabhupada speaking, right? Speaking the translations of his books, recording them. I think this was at like 2 a.m. in the morning. And Maharaj was thinking, here I am, a young man in my 20s, a young sannyasi, right? Here I am, a young sannyasi, and I'm sleeping. But Srila Prabhupada, he is awake, and he is composing this literature. This is a kirtan mela. This is a non-stop kirtan. And he said in that moment he realized, yes, Prabhupada has said that ISKCON is my body. But if ISKCON is Prabhupada's body, then book distribution is his soul. This is the constant engagement of Srila Prabhupada. So in this way, we should understand what is Prabhupada's glory, what are his books, and what is his empowerment. Right? It's not a casual thing. So, we see this is an interesting concept, the importance of Srila Prabhupada's books and the importance of the Sankirtan Yagya as compared to anything else. And of course, Prabhupada, he is appealing to the creation of Yagya alongside humanity. Yagya is the default nature of reality, right? And we see this. Along with the creation of the human race is yagya. Yagya is inherent to everything, and we see this. No matter what you are doing, you're having to do yagya. Right? I think about this. I've been working very hard in my university library for the past few weeks, and I was thinking as I sat back in my chair and I saw all these people, they're falling asleep, they're drinking. I don't, especially once you take up to Krishna consciousness, you stop drinking caffeine, right? And I just see, I don't know how they can drink so much coffee without having a heart attack. I'm just seeing one coffee after the other, one coffee, one coffee, one coffee. Their eyes are like red, bulging out. And I was thinking, what a great yagya for this degree, right? What a great sacrifice they're doing in order to be the best in their class and get a good degree, right? There, this yagya is being done. Then I think of some of my other friends who didn't go to university, but, they're going to the gym. I think they wake up for Mongol Aarti, except then somehow they take a wrong turn and they end up at the gym instead of the temple. It's very confusing. They get up for Mongol Aarti and then they're there and, maybe they're chanting while lifting their weights. But they go off so early, so much austerity, right? Just in order to be very fit. This is the yagya that they are doing, right? Everyone is doing yagya to get something because we cannot get something without losing something. This is the nature of the world, right? The nature of the reality we're in is that I can't get something without losing something. To do well in the exam, I must study. Right? To get fit, I must exercise. This is the nature of the material world. Yagya is the center of it. And so we must do yagya in order to have any success. This is the point Prabhupada has made. By this yagya, all of reality is satisfied. Why? Because yagya is a central principle by which we live. We hear in the Bhagavad Gita, who is pleased by yagya? Sorry? Yes, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, He is ultimately pleased. Who else is pleased by yagya? The devatas, right? And what can we do without the devatas? There is a devata in charge of this eye. There is a devata in charge of that eye. There is a devata in charge of all of the senses. Without the wind, how will anyone hear us, right? You need air particles to vibrate to hear, right? Without the sun, who will see anything? We will have no illumination, right? Without rain, how will we drink? How will our senses be able to manifest in this world? Right? Without water to sustain the gross body, how will the subtle senses be able to interface with the gross world? Without pleasing the devatas, we have no ability to do anything. Does this make sense? And so in this way, we learn through sacrifice alone we can live. Through sacrifice alone are we even able to raise our hand. Through sacrifice alone are we even able to see. Now, what is the importance of this? We are so much absorbed in these ideas of our independence, right? I am such an independent person. I am such a unique person. I can do things on my own. This is the feeling we have. But yagya reminds us, actually, I achieve nothing on my own. I'm always at the mercy of others. We think, we come to Krishna consciousness and then we learn to, I'm so reliant on the spiritual master. We feel this way. And sometimes people will say, you Hare Krishnas, right? You're always talking about surrender to spiritual master, surrender to Shastra. Right? Be an independent person. Be your own person. But how can anyone live without the sun? How can anyone live without somebody to grow their crops, right? To harvest the food they're eating, right? How can anyone live without somebody who taught them how to read? How can anyone live without somebody who taught them how to provide for themselves? Everyone is surrendered. It is just in Krishna consciousness we choose to surrender to the higher principle, right? So yagya reminds us of this. Yagya reminds us that none of us is an individual, right? We are all interdependent on each other. We are all products of each other. Does this make sense? It reminds us that we don't, as much as we like to feel so egoic, as much as we like to feel in our ego, right? Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha, right? Ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. Right? The greatest of all fools, vimudha, is doing what? Is thinking, I am doing this. But no. Yajna reminds us, actually, I'm not even doing this. I'm doing nothing. I'm simply at the mercy of others. So then, in this way, yajna is the defining nature of reality. Sacrifice. Through this way, we can attain things. Through this way, we will have any success. So of course, Brahma, he has created human society alongside yajna. And as part of this creation, we see that Brahma, he is a very intelligent personality, no? Brahma, he's somewhat intelligent. Correct? Of course. You know, at the most we have one brain, he has four. So Brahma, he is a very intelligent personality. And when he creates this universe, what happens? Krishna, he teaches him. It's described by some of our acharyas. Krishna appears as a gopa, but he's doing jnana mudra with one of his hands. And as he holds his jnana mudra, he speaks Bhagavatam to Brahma. And when he speaks Bhagavatam to Brahma, Brahma feels, wow, you know, this is the founder acharya of our parampara, right? He's thinking, this personality is so great, so revered, and such an elevated position. And then later on, what happens is some devatas, they appear, he creates the whole world. And these devatas, they come along to him, and they say, you know, you've created this whole world, but now it's not in a good place. Now it's in a bit of a bad position. They say, please, can you get some help for us? And then Brahma, he calls to Narayan, and he says, oh Narayan, please come. Please deliver this world. Please deliver this planet. Right? And then what happens? There's this little blue boy in a village somewhere. And apparently this is Narayan. And Brahma, he looks, and he thinks that same hand that did the Jnana Mudra all those millions of years ago, right? That same hand, the left one, is eating food, right? And his friends, they are taking food out of his hands, and he is taking the second-hand food out of his friends' hands. I heard once from my Guru Maharaj that there's one Leela Sthali in Vrindavan. And what happened is that day, Krishna, he's eating all of this great prasad. And everyone is thinking, all of this, well actually it's bhoga, he's eating it. All of this bhoga, he's eating all of this bhoga, right? And as he's filling his mouth, all of the other cowherd boys are thinking, this looks so delicious. Mother just showed that she cooks so well, right? And so his lips, his mouth becomes so full like this, like completely full. And the other cowherd boys, they think, we want some. So what they do is they get their hands and they go like this. And then it spits out of his mouth. And then they grab all the prasad and then they eat it. So Brahma, he's seeing things like this. And he begins to think. And he begins to think the sort of things we think with our minds. Surely this cannot be God. Surely this cannot be that same personality by whose mercy I was able to understand how to create this whole universe. Surely it is not him. And so he goes. And he goes, and what does he do? He very famously, he steals all of these friends. But actually he doesn't steal these friends. It is not Brahma that steals these friends. It is Yogamaya. Yogamaya, she comes and she makes them all disappear. And so Brahma, by his endeavor, he thinks he achieves something. But kartaham iti manyate. Right? Brahma, he has tried to steal them, but actually Yogamaya, in order to allow this pastime to happen, hides them. Because how can anyone steal the cowherd boys from Krishna? And so they are hidden by Yogamaya away. Yogamaya hides all of the calves, all of the boys. They're all hidden. They can't be seen anymore. And then, of course, there is a second set. A second set that is expanded out. And this is the set that Brahma takes with him. He feels very satisfied. And he thinks, I knew it. Not God. And in this way, he goes away. And of course, what does Krishna do in this moment? So many cowherd boys. We have the fake set with Brahma. We have the real set hidden by Yogamaya. And now what do we have? Krishna expanding out. And what do we read in Krishna book? What do we read? What happens? What is the description that we hear after Krishna expands out as each one of these personalities? What do we hear? What happens right after this? They go back to Vrindavan and everyone is fully in love with them, right? What do we hear about? We hear about how the cows are giving more milk. The parents are somehow more in love with their children. But what we don't hear so much about, is how much Krishna loves these cowherd boys, right? We don't hear so much about Krishna's relationship with these. We hear a lot about the relationship of the Vrijvasis with them, but we don't hear about Krishna's relationship with them. We hear not much at all. This is interesting, right? Isn't the Bhagavatam about Krishna? Isn't it about Krishna's relationship with his devotees? It is. But the reason why it focuses entirely, almost, on the Vrijvasis' love is that now Krishna does not feel any rasa anymore with these cowherd boys and these calves because they're himself. Right? But now he feels that rasa between his devotees in these expanded forms of himself. Does this make sense? Now Krishna, he's tasting that rasa of love with all of these cows directly. Right? Before they would think, I love my child a lot, but I like Krishna a little bit more, I shouldn't tell him. Before they would think, I love my child, I'm proud of my child, but if they were Krishna, that would be a little nicer, right? This is how they'd feel. But now they're tasting that rasa directly. But Krishna, he is not tasting that rasa. Now there's two things to think of this. One is the glories of Krishna, right? How glorious Krishna is that these parents are loving their children even more. But the other thing we can think is, what are the glories of the devotees? Krishna is now deprived of something that he wishes to taste. Does this make sense? Krishna can no longer taste rasa anymore. Of course he does with those cowherd boys that are hidden by Yogamaya. He is still tasting rasa with them. But we can see here that capacity for rasa, which is the defining feature of Krishna, raso vai saha. He is rasa raj. That capacity to taste rasa, no longer there. What is the glories of the Vaishnavas? That the Vaishnavas can provide that defining feature of Krishna for him. This is why the Nitya Siddha, Nitya Parshads are there. There's never a point when Goloka is empty, because then Krishna would not be able to taste rasa. Does this make sense? So, in this way, we see he expands out. And what does Bhagavatam describe? And our acharyas, they say that Krishna doesn't just take their forms. Meticulously, each detail is perfectly created. Each crevice in their hands, each item that they use. Krishna remembers how the shape of the horns that they would blow used, right? How their plows looked like, had the folds and wrinkles in their dhotis. Krishna knew each detail, and he expands out with each detail. Again, what does this indicate? What is Krishna meditating upon? The whole world is meditating on Krishna, but Krishna is meditating on his devotees. That is how he is replicating each detail. This is the object of his smaranam. Krishna's meditation the whole time on his beautiful friends is coming out as he replicates each detail, each item they carry. Right? We speak about Krishna and we talk about Krishna with his flute. And we look at our beautiful Gopinath and we think each day, and we should think each day, we should remember. As we go through the day, we should ask ourselves. I've made this point a few times, so I won't make it too in length again, but we should remember each day, we should quiz ourselves. What was Gopinath's dhoti's color today? And what was Radharani's sari today? What were the colors of both of them, right? And in this way we can remember, we can engage in remembrance of Radha Gopinath. But in the way that we are trying to remember Radha Gopinath, Gopinath himself, and Gopanath in this pastime, right? He is constantly meditating on his devotees. And therefore each detail is perfectly replicated. Each detail perfectly replicated, and yet even more beautiful. Because Krishna's vision is there with love. With love he is gazing upon his devotees. And therefore he takes these perfect personalities who are beautiful in every way, and they look even more beautiful. Because through the lens of love, they are beautified even deeper in Krishna's meditation. And he recreates that out. And therefore, how can the Vrijvasis be anything but completely infatuated with all of these expansions? It's very charming, our understanding of Krishna. Who else can be God but this personality who is meditating on his devotees so deeply? So in this way, Krishna, he is expanded out. And he's expanded out as all of these personalities. And when he is expanding out as them, we know Brahma at one point, he thinks, oh, maybe I've made a mistake. And in fact, he thinks this very quickly because Brahma, in this world, he is the presiding deity over buddhi, over intelligence. This is his position. And so he's intelligent enough to realize, oh, what have I done? Right? And so we know he comes back. And when he comes back, of course, a few years have passed. For him, it was only a few moments, but for the Earth planet, a few years have passed. And when he returns, he comes back. And of course, I don't have time. A little time left, so I won't say the whole pastime. But we know that Krishna, he unveils what is actually happening. Because Brahma is confused. He sees all of the cowherd boys there. He sees all the calves there. And he says, wait a second, they're with me. Right? But then they're also there. And he's left in confusion. Again, Brahma, who is so intelligent that with all of his four minds, Brahma, he is able to calculate how to create this whole world. And yet he is bewildered. It is what is the name of this pastime? In Sanskrit we have the name, right? What is it? Brahma Vimohan Leela. I heard once from one sadhu that if he had one head, it would be the Brahma Mohan Leela. But because he has four heads, it has become the Brahma Vimohan Leela. All of the intelligence of Brahma means what? It means he has a greater capacity to be confused. This is what his intelligence has achieved. So people often, they have this desire, they have this feeling, I will grasp Krishna with the fist of my intelligence. Infinite Krishna with my finite mind, and I will catch him like this. What do we see? Krishna, he has come as Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Why? Because he wishes to taste what the devotees are tasting. Krishna himself does not fully understand who Krishna is, but we will, with our finite minds. Right? So with all of this intelligence, what has he achieved? Brahma has become more confused. And so sometimes we will think, through intelligence we will understand Krishna, but we never will. In this world, there are so many different names, so many different languages, right? And in each language, we'll find there are different words for things, right? Water, in Bengali, they call it jol, right? In Hindi, it's pani. In German, Wasser, right? In English, water, right? And when people come together, they'll say, we have all of these different words, right? And that's like all of the different mental philosophies of the world, right? All the different philosophies, this is God, right? He's the uncaused cause, the original cause, right? The creator of everything, the source, the divine. There's all these different words that people will have for God in all the different languages of the mind. But when all of these people come together, no matter which words they have for water, when they drink water, then they understand what water is. In the same way, we can have all these mental conceptions of God, but when we chant Harinam, that is like drinking the water. There is God directly. Koli kale nam rupe Krishna avatar, nam hoite hoy shorbo jogot nishtar. Right? In this Kali Yuga, this holy name is directly Krishna himself. It is a direct tasting of Krishna. And it is through this way that we can understand. When I was in Guwahati, we have this, there's this girl who works for us, and she does like cleaning and cooking and all. And so I was asking her, I asked her, I was just talking to her. I asked her, I said, what is your religion? What is your dharma? What's your religion? I was curious, right, what answer she'll give. She'll say she's a Shakta. There's lots of Shaktas in Assam. Well, will she say she's a Vaishnav? That's what I was expecting. That's what most people would say. They'll say, I'm a Vaishnav, I'm a Shakta, or they'll say, I'm a Muslim Christian, whatever, right? So I asked her this, and I really liked her response. She looked at me and she said, my religion is the Panchatattva. And then she went on and kept on cooking. And I thought, she has not read so many Shastras, right? I know that she has not studied so much philosophy. And yet, what a perfect answer. I remember when she said that, I thought, I want my religion to be the Panchatattva, right? I can say Brahma, Madhva, Gauriya, Saraswat, Sampradaya, right? I can say Gauriya Vaishnav, Gauriya Vedanta philosophy. I can say all of these things, but do I feel in my heart that my religion is the Panchatattva? No. So Brahma, with all of his heads, what does his intelligence get him? Kidnapping all the cowherd boys, right? kidnapping all of these calves. And then what happens? All the curtain of Maya is pulled away, and then he sees all of these personalities, but he doesn't just see the Vishnu forms, right? Who does he see with them? He sees the three modes personified. He sees all the universes emanating. He sees everything. Bhagavatam says, from the blades of grass in every universe to the Brahmas of every universe, engaging in worship of each one of these Vishnu forms. Everything, from the grass to Brahma, what does that include? That includes every single fly, every single mosquito, right? Every single whale, every single dolphin, every fish in the ocean, every bird in the sky, right? Every insect buzzing around, every human on earth, every monkey climbing through the trees, all of them. He sees all of reality is there. Every living entity and every non-living entity is surrounding each one of these Vishnu forms that Krishna has expanded in. And what are they doing? They're glorifying him. Each one of these entities is engaged in Sankirtan, whether they like it or not. Prabhupada says this, every living entity in existence is serving Krishna, whether they like it or not. In this Krishna consciousness movement, we are simply trying to become conscious of that reality. Actually, people talk about Sankirtan, right? And they talk about Sankirtan as if it's an imposition, right? As if Sankirtan is something that you engage in, but actually everything is being engaged in Sankirtan. Because this whole universe is what? It is the energy of Krishna. How can the energy of Krishna turn around and hurt Krishna? How can the energy of Krishna hurt him? It is him, right? Jiber Shurup hoy Krishna Nitto Dash. Krishner Toshna Shakti Bheda Bhed Prakash. Right? How can the energy of Krishna turn around and hurt him? It can't. Right? It can either be an ignorance of the fact that it is serving him, or it can be an awareness of it. But it can never stop doing that. This is the foundational nature of the Shakti of Krishna. Right? And therefore we see this in the Vedanta Sutra. There's a very interesting point that's made. The Vedanta Sutra, it says that actually every word is a name of Krishna. Every word. Every word is a name of Krishna. Why? Because this whole world, right? Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam, right? Krishna, he is here, present in this whole world, and the whole world is moving, right? Kartaham miti manyate, right? Only the fool says, I am the one who is moving this world, right? But actually it's said, the Paramatma is there in every single atom, right? This whole world is animated, it is coming in all of its forms and shapes, primarily through the agentship, through the doership of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We have a desire, and then Krishna allows it, right? He allows it to be rolled out. But ultimately, the doership is coming from Krishna. And thus, because Krishna is the primary mover of all reality, everything is primarily his name, and secondarily the name of the object. This is an interesting point. Vedanta Sutra makes this point. Mahaprabhu also makes this point when he's teaching his students. Every single word in reality, if we understand it properly, that's what Vedanta Sutra says, so you don't become a Mayavadi, right? But every word, once we understand it properly, is a name of Krishna. These are secondary names, not primary names, but they're still names of Krishna. Because everything in this world is coming from Krishna. Everything in this world is naturally glorifying Krishna. Shishupal goes and he insults Krishna to his face, and yet every word he says is a glorification, right? Indra, what does Indra say about Krishna? When Krishna stops at sacrifices in the Indra Puja, Indra says, what is this uneducated, stupid boy doing? And yet the Sanskrit can mean all sorts of alternate things. Saraswati, on the tongue of Indra, has meant that uneducated. Agya means that person who cannot be attained by knowledge, right? Gopa, Gopal doesn't mean a simple cowherd boy only, even though that is actually very sweet. That almost doesn't need to have a secondary meaning. But it also will mean that person who is a protector of the cows. Every word that is coming out from Indra's mouth, from Shishupal's mouth, right? Each one of these words, even Pondrak, when Pondrak appears in the court and he says, you are a bogus Krishna, right? Stop taking your items and decorating yourself, right? There's a secondary meaning to his verse which says, I am a bogus Krishna, please kill me so that I can be delivered. These are the two ways the Sanskrit can be translated, because every word is a glorification of Krishna, right? Everything in this world is Sankirtan. When the waves are crashing, that is Sankirtan. When the planets are moving, that is Sankirtan. Because all of this world is emanating forth from Krishna, and that is what Brahma saw in that moment. All of reality is Sankirtan. We just need to acknowledge that. That is our position. Krishna Bhuli She Jeev Onadi Bohi. Today's a Chaitanya Charitamrita day. I haven't quoted anything else with CC. Krishna Bhuli She Jeev Onadi Bohirmukh. Right? Otoeb Maya Tare Deo Shongshar Duk. Right? We hear. Eternally, the jiva has forgotten Krishna. Onadi Bohirmukh has turned his face away from Krishna. What does this mean? It means turning the face away, that everything that is happening is Sankirtan. Everything that is happening is a glorification of Krishna, but because we try to deny the connection of this world to Krishna, we do not realize that all of this is Sankirtan. Right? This is what Brahma sees. Right? This is what he sees. He sees all of the universes surrounding each one of these Vishnu forms. And he sees that nothing is divorced from Krishna. And thus, what is Sankirtan? This Sankirtan Yagya is acknowledgement of reality as it is and not reality as it is not. Maya is to not realize that everything is glorification of Krishna. And so therefore, when Indra insults Krishna, therefore when Shishupal insults Krishna, therefore when Pondrak insults Krishna, all of their words are simply glorifications, because all words are Krishna's. All words are Krishna's names. All words are the glories of Krishna. Everything is the glory of Krishna, and thus there is nothing that is divorced from Sankirtan. The Sankirtan Yagya, I once heard from one sadhu, Sankirtan Yagya is the one yagya whose fire can consume everything. We can take this whole universe and pour it into the Sankirtan Yagya. And that is one way of thinking. Another way of thinking is that this universe is already in the yagya of Sankirtan. And we are simply trying to elevate our consciousness to realize that. Therefore, the Uttama Adhikari does not see devotee or non-devotee, right? The Uttama Adhikari sees through all of the misconceptions of the world. And the Uttama Adhikari says, what am I but a fool? Because all of these personalities love Krishna so perfectly. Does this make sense? It's not a Mayavad point, right? And it's very careful, because our philosophy, it is abhed as much as it is also bhed, right? And so both of these aspects are there. So in this way, this is Sankirtan. And we can access this through the Krishna conscious process. Through the process of this Sankirtan Yagya. By engaging in it, then we will be able to realize that all of reality is a celebration of Krishna. That is the nature of this whole world. And so it is said, right? Love makes the world go round. This is a saying that's often said. But it's also the reason why in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, to come back to our original point right at the beginning of this class, it is also the reason why Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that yagya makes the whole world go round. Right? Because what is love if not sacrifice? Love requires sacrifice. And therefore, yes, love makes the world go round. Yes, yagya makes the world go round. But that is because love and sacrifice are intertwined. Without sacrifice, love is meaningless, right? This is one of the distinguishing factors we can say. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, we hear love means to satisfy the desires of the other. Lust means to satisfy the desires of our own. And to satisfy the desires of the other over our own, that is yagya. That is sacrifice. And therefore, yagya is the nature of reality. And therefore, what greater yagya is there than the Sankirtan yagya, right? Because if love is nothing without sacrifice, right? Sacrifice is also much more greater with love. And the Sankirtan yagya is that. It is that yagya of love, of devotion to Krishna, of celebration of Krishna. Therefore, Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam, right? Therefore, this Krishna Sankirtanam is the greatest. Sorry, I'll wrap up soon. I'm just going a few minutes over. Sankirtanam means, some means together. And that is a glorious understanding. Prabhupada once was on a morning walk, and one sannyasi was telling Prabhupada was talking about, walking across the beach, and then this sannyasi had heard Prabhupada on the radio. Prabhupada famously said, "London is hell," right? They said, do you believe in hell? And he said, London is hell. So this sannyasi liked that because it's actually a really cool quote, right? It's a wonderful Prabhupada quote. So the sannyasi was really fired up. The sannyasi is there walking, and then Prabhupada's speaking, and then the sannyasi says, this is hell, Prabhupada. This is hell, like that. And then Prabhupada says, no, this is not hell. I am with the devotees. How can that ever be hell? This is what Prabhupada says. And Prabhupada says, we do not desire heaven or hell. We desire to have sweet exchanges with the Vaishnavas and to serve the sadhus. That is all we want. How can I say I'm in hell if I'm here walking with the Vaishnavas? So Sankirtan is great. Some Sankirtan together. But some also in Sanskrit means complete and perfect. Param Vijayate, Shri Krishna Sankirtanam, right? It is Sankirtanam because it is the perfect kirtan. But this perfect kirtan, which is Krishna Kirtan, it is also the perfect sacrifice. And therefore everything will be addressed. What does Prabhupada say at the end? And then I will wrap up on this point. I promise, I'm so sorry. What does Prabhupada say at the end? Everything, social, political, industrial, commercial, everything will be addressed by the performance of this Sankirtan Yagya, right? How can we say that this Yagya will address everything? It can address everything because, as I said, Brahma, when he saw all of those forms, he saw all reality around. Jiber Sharup hoy, Krishna Rintudash. The nature of the energies of Krishna is that they are all engaged in Sankirtan constantly. It comes to the root cause. The very nature of everything is Sankirtan, celebration of Krishna. And so if everything is actively engaged in that, if everything is actively aware that that is the nature, that is the constitutional position of what is happening, then naturally, if you come to the root, everything else is satisfied. We see this in the history of Bengal. When the Sankirtan movement became manifest in Bengal, literacy for women increased, caste discrimination decreased. These are like in secular academic historical books. All of these things increase and decrease. All of society was satisfied because the constitutional position was being realized, right? And therefore everything else will flow out from that because the nature of reality is being realized, the nature of the jiva is being satisfied, and everything is in its right place. From this one right thing, everything else will be satisfied. So that's why if we get too involved in all of these other causes, we will miss that Sankirtan. It'll have the flow-on effect. Anyways, there's so much more to say on this topic. It's a purport glorifying Sankirtan. You can't run out. You can't stop glorifying glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But I'm going very much over time. Please forgive me for the offense. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.